It's Thursday, August 27th, 2020, and Thursday's got to be better than Wednesday, the 26th, doesn't it? Joining me today, Wajahat Ali and Tim Wise. We'll talk a lot about race wars and more. I'm Pete Dominic. Time to stand up with me right now. Oh, my goodness. Yesterday was a crazy day, and it's not even over as I record this and try to pretend like it's Thursday. About 8 o'clock, and the RNC is about to be underway. A hurricane is bearing down on the golf course, probably a lot of golf courses, the Gulf Coast. A Cat 4 hurricane near Texas and Louisiana with, quote, unsurvivable storm surge. 6 million people under hurricane watch or warning. If you're one of them, I'm thinking of you and would love to hear from you. So reach out. standupwithpete@gmail.com is my email address. I have a lot to say here at the top, but probably not enough energy to do it. Today was brutal. Today was just simply brutal in the news. I mean, you know, when you think about the world and then you think about your own personal universe and try to separate them, it can be difficult sometimes. But waking up to seeing that horrible shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as a result of the protests there and the violence was devastating. And seeing that kid just walk away with his gun, walk right by the police, was so enraging and so upsetting that, for me at least, it pretty much ruined the morning. I was short-tempered with my wife and with my daughter and just kind of unengaged and had a hard time breaking out of the funk until I talked to today's guest, Tim Wise, and Wajahat Ali, who both made me feel better just having a conversation and connecting with them. And hopefully that's what you get out of the show. You get a similar feeling hearing these conversations as I do having them. Thank you very much to all of you who are supporting this show, the paid subscription, and I do it every day. I can't do it without the paid subscriptions because it's my job. So if you're listening and you get $5 or more to spare for the month, that'd be awesome. I want to give a shout out to today's subscribers and new people signing up every day, which is simply amazing to me. Brian Hoyt just became a $5 subscriber. Hello, Brian. Thank you very much. Edgar Borchardt also became a $5 subscriber, and I love that name, Edgar Borchardt. Welcome to the stand-up community. And Tony Williams subscribed with a $10 subscription. Hello, Tony. Thank you, Brian, Tony, and Edgar. It is great to have you in our community. I look forward to hearing more about you and having you hang out with us on the Zoom Hangout, which I'm going to try to do again tomorrow, Thursday night at 8 p.m. I'm going to try. I've had a real heck of a week, so it might be a spur-of-the-moment announcement. I should say that's tonight. That would be tonight, wouldn't it be? Yeah. Well, wait on that, and I'll send out an email to Patreon supporters who subscribe, and I look forward to meeting you. So the other big development as a result of the violence and death in Wisconsin was the professional sports teams in Wisconsin who are currently playing, the Milwaukee Bucks, who are in the playoffs in basketball in the NBA, and the Milwaukee Brewers, who are playing Major League Baseball, both decided to sit out tonight. And it's a really interesting development. What will be the outcome of it? I talk a little bit about it with Wajahat Ali. It happened while I was talking to Tim Wise, so we didn't really get much time to digest it. And I'd love to always know what you think about that and everything else. It's a pretty bold move. Jamil Smith, who is a great writer over at Rolling Stone, wrote, "We don't need sports more than we need to survive." It was true talking about the pandemic, and this sports strike only reminds us of that. I'm thankful for what the Bucks and Brewers and all other clubs withholding their services in protest of police violence and systemic racism. So that's a pretty big development. Here are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris responding to the shooting of Jacob Blake by that police officer.
What I saw in that video makes me sick. Once again, a black man, Jacob Blake, has been shot by the police in broad daylight with the whole world watching. You know, I spoke to Jacob's mom and dad, sister, and other members of the family just a little bit earlier. And I told them justice must and will be done.
What happened there is so tragic and still represents the two systems of justice in America. There are still two systems of justice in America, and we need to fight, again, for that ideal that says all people are supposed to be treated equally, which is still not happening.
Here is former NBA star and current very highly respected NBA coach in an emotional and honest statement about the systemic racism and violence in the country. Doc Rivers.
What stands out to me is just watching the Republican convention and this spewing this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung. We've been shot. And all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. You know, it's just really sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better. Like, we got, you know, it's funny. We protest and they send riot guards, right? They send people in riot outfits. They go to Michigan with guns and they're spitting on cops and nothing happens. The training has to change in the police force. The unions have to be taken down in the police force. My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us, just like they protect everybody else. I didn't want to talk about it before the game because it's so hard, like, to just keep watching it. That video, if you watch that video, you don't need to be black to be outraged. You need to be American and outraged. And how dare the Republicans talk about fear? We're the ones that need to be scared. We're the ones having to talk to every black child.
Yeah. Well said, Doc Rivers. You don't need to be black to be outraged. You need to be American. Well said. Yeah. Like I said, I was pretty outraged and depressed and upset hearing about that news. For his part, the president said he's going to send federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin to, quote, restore law and order amid protests over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Trump's authority to send those federal resources, however, is limited without the direct invitation of the state government. Meanwhile, this kid, 17-year-old police admirer, was arrested and charged with homicide after two people were killed and others seriously wounded by his gunfire. He traveled from Illinois to Wisconsin, which is not far where he lives. And he also, by the way, appeared in the front row at a Trump rally in January. How about that? After 3 days following Jacob Blake's shooting, President Trump has still not directly addressed it, but instead has tweeted that he will, quote, not stand for looting, arson, violence, and lawlessness on America's streets. So that is so far what we've heard from the president. And then we'll hear from him, of course, tonight at the RNC, which I am not able to comment on because it hasn't happened yet. But I'll be tweeting about it. And this is not even going to be available till it's over. So why am I saying all that? So a rough day. And between a hurricane and the pandemic and the president's madness, the RNC going on, obviously another horrible shooting of an unarmed black man, it's tough. It's a lot. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and angry and sad and depressed and scared, good. That means you're a good person, a thoughtful person. and a concerned citizen. So let's stick together. Let's help each other. Let's support each other. Let's stay connected, because you're not alone. And I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast. And I think you're going to love the conversations that I have with both of my guests here. Let me get started first with Tim Wise, who is an anti-racist speaker and author. I caught up with him when he had just checked into his hotel. He's on the road for the first time since the pandemic started, giving a speech in Texas. And we had a great conversation. Tim is on Twitter at Tim Jacob Wise. You can support him on Patreon. You should get all of his books, and he's got a new book which he mentions, and I order during our conversation, which is a collection of his essays. And we had another awesome conversation. And then, of course, coming up after that, the great Wajahat Ali. Here it is, Tim Wise. And it's great to see Tim Wise again. Thank you, Tim, for joining me. You are you're actually on the road, which is interesting. Yeah. How is flying?
Flying was actually fine. I mean,
no anti-maskers on your flight?
No, everybody was very responsible. And we had about maybe 50 people on the first leg, 40 on the next. Wasn't bad at all. Everybody was masked.
Your own row, your own seat. How close were you to?
Okay, so here's the thing. The first leg, I was on Southwest.
And, what an arrogant, braggy thing to say.
Right. I was, Southwest. Yeah. When I tell you that I'm in Greyhound in the sky, that's elitist, clearly. So no, I love Southwest.
They actually have a pretty good business model, right?
They're great. They're wonderful people. But anyway, so I get on, and I know there's only like 50 people on the flight. So I get in the front row, and I'm thinking all these people, we got plenty of room, just spread out. And some guy naturally wants to sit down 2 seats from me because he really wants to get off the plane first. And I'm like, really? So I had to get up and move. I'm like, I'll move. I'll move. I decided I would be the martyr, and he let me. And so I moved. Like, whatever.
Wait, did you make that assumption that he sat there because he wanted to get up early or first, or did he say it?
Yeah, that's what I assumed, because that's what I did. Right? But the thing is, if I get on the plane and there's a pandemic and someone's sitting there, not even classy, just the remotely rational thing to do is get your ass to a different row. Why would you want to be in the same space? But he's like, well, I'm just going to sit right here. So we did for 2 seconds. And then I got up and I moved, but it was fine. And I hear that the air filtration system on planes is the best, and supposedly very safe. So, we'll see, give it 4 days, check back with me, and we'll see. If I'm in a fever 102, you'll know what a good was. But,
so you wore a mask all the time? Was it burdensome? Was it uncomfortable?
I mean, it was mildly claustrophobic a couple of times, but I mean, it wasn't bad. I think that's the longest sustained period that I've worn a mask, but it wasn't awful. I mean, it certainly wasn't tyranny. I can say that. It wasn't one step removed from the labor camp or whatever it is that the militia folks would like us to think.
Did you see that the Navy SEAL who shot and killed bin Laden took a picture of himself on the plane not wearing a mask?
Yeah.
And was I'm not wearing a mask because I'm not a pussy. And Delta banned him. Can you imagine if you killed bin Laden and then somehow you were able to choose a behavior that got you banned from an entire airline the rest of your life? You would think you would fly free the rest of your life if you kill bin Laden and get free beers wherever you go. But now he's actually been banned.
Or just on a totally different, how incredibly fragile is your masculinity that you killed bin Laden, but you still need to prove your masculinity by not wearing a mask on an airline.
I know. You could literally be.
I did this thing, I killed this terrorist, but just in case you think that I might be a quote unquote pussy, I'm going to not wear a mask to demonstrate that I'm an alpha male. I mean, it's incredibly.
If you killed, what you're saying is that if you killed bin Laden, you could, for the rest of your life, do the most, quote, traditionally feminine behaviors and outfits and still be the manliest guy in the world because you killed bin Laden. I mean, you could run around in a pink tutu and you'd still be a guy's guy because in the end you could be like, listen, I killed bin Laden. I wear whatever I want.
Right. And yet you still need to prove something to somebody. So whatever. I don't know what that's about. But.
Well, you do know what that's about. You know a lot about that. You've talked about gender issues a lot as you have race and the two obviously are colliding quite a bit now. And let's go to Wisconsin, where you saw a lot of these guys that are dressed up with their militia outfits and their ammo belts and, of course, their big guns. How do you see, what do you think of what is happening when there are these protests as a result of police violence? And then obviously sometimes there's rioting, sometimes there's vandalism, but now increasingly the Proud Boys are showing up, or the local militia is putting out a call. And last night, one of these guys who traveled, by the way, a long way, a 17-year-old from Illinois, and ended up killing people.
Right. Well, I think what's happening, look, is first of all, we have a president who's sending out really clear signals about who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And so if you have a president who is saying we have to stop these rioters and these looters, and he's much more concerned about the breaking of windows, which I don't happen to endorse as a tactic or a strategy. But if you're more concerned about that than the fact that a cop shot a guy 7 times in the back who was not threatening him, if you're tweeting more about the property destruction than the shooting of that young black man, then you clearly have your priorities wrong. So when the president does that, he sends a message to these guys, whether it's the 17-year-old who's now been arrested on murder charges, or whether it's the other folks who were there to, from what I understand, protect a gas station. Now, again, I'm not saying like burning a gas station is a movement tactic. That's not revolutionary. It's not radical. It's not progressive. It's not helpful. But A, nobody was going to burn the gas station from what we can tell. And B, if you were, it's not worth shooting somebody for. And yet the message that's being sent is that essentially white people's property is more valuable and more meaningful than black folks' lives. And so we can't be surprised that we're having this conflict right now. But I mean, if we have the president doing that, and we have a sheriff, by the way, I mean, the sheriff in Kenosha, let me just say this. I had a friend send me this shortly before we got on the call. This is a guy who now is sort of parroting this very responsible line, about how he didn't want to deputize these militia people because this is what happens. But this is a guy 2 years ago. There was a thing that happened in Kenosha, according to this piece that somebody sent me a couple years ago. There was a theft at a mall or something, and it led to a chase, and the chase led to a crash, and whatever. But it was a theft, and they had a police chase or whatever for that. And after this incident, the same sheriff who now wants to say how responsible he is and how irresponsible the militia people are. This is a guy who said, I'm going to quote him directly from the piece, January 25th of 2018. Says, I'm to the point that I think society has come to a threshold where some people aren't worth saving. We need to build warehouses, he said, put these people into it and lock them away for the rest of their lives, put them in jail, stop them from going out and getting 10 other women pregnant and having small children. Let's put them away. We have to get to the point where we no longer put up with the garbage people that fill our communities. They're a cancer to society. Jesus. That's the sheriff of Kenosha, who now says, we don't want these rogue vigilantes distributing justice. Well, I don't want an asshole like that distributing justice, whether it's in Kenosha or anywhere else. If you believe that there are quote unquote garbage people who deserve to either die or rot in jail for what? For a theft at a mall that you had to have a chase to track them down for? I mean, that's real. That's the garbage person that you want locked away forever. Somebody who stole some stuff or whatever. Like that, to me, is what sends a signal to these lunatics that, they can go up to this 17-year-old kid was kibitzing with the cops, right? Just acting like, here, have some water. We're really glad you're out here, kid. And then we're surprised that kid goes and shoots people and then walks out of town and is on the run. They had to arrest him at his parents' house because they didn't think to stop him, even though they watched him shoot somebody. So this is the problem. We say like there's the cops here and the vigilantes here and the militia here. No, it's sort of all one group right now, and it's all being directed by the president of the United States and his rhetoric.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern as to you saw these videos of law enforcement last night in Kenosha thanking these militia guys and giving them bottles of water. And I tweeted about that, and someone reminded me of Tim Snyder's quote, which now I can't find, about what happens when the police start working with like local militia forces, what that means. Tim Snyder, of course, a history professor at Yale University who wrote a book called On Tyranny that everybody should read. Here it is. When the men with guns who have always claimed to be against the system start wearing uniforms and marching with torches and pictures of a leader, the end is nigh. When the pro-leader paramilitary and the official police and military intermingle, the end has come.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen it in Portland. We've seen what's going on there, which, again, I'm not a fan of burning the federal building or whatever. I don't think that's a radical tactic. And I tweeted out today, the thing that bothers me so much about some of the demos, the black folks who were leading this struggle are incredibly responsible and disciplined. It's a bunch of white folks who were doing most of the craziest stuff, right? It's the white folks who were yelling at people having lunch in Washington, D.C. and trying to shame them for not being woke enough. It's white folks who were knocking over statues of an abolitionist in Madison, Wisconsin, because they saw him. They're like, it's a white guy with a Norwegian name. He must be a racist. Actually, he was an abolitionist. But what the hell? Let's just knock it over because that's performative radicalism. And it's white folks who are doing a lot of the property damage in Portland. And then when the Proud Boys show up and you got these folks fighting each other, the cops are just sitting back. They've been protecting the Proud Boys there for 3 or 4 years now. And Patriot Prayer, which is one of the spinoffs of the Proud Boys in Portland, they are literally sitting there hoping that the Proud Boys will knock the hell out of anyone on the BLM side, whether it's black folks or mostly white, quote unquote, radicals, because they don't care. To them, the Proud Boys are on their side. Right. They're, whatever happens benefits the cops, right? If things get out of hand, then the cops can swoop in and say, see, you need us. You need us to restore order. This is what happens when you don't have a strong police force. So if there's chaos, they win. If there's not chaos, they can take credit for it. And this is why the movement is talking about significant policing reform, talking about depolicing, talking about redirecting resources from law enforcement, because the problems that we have in our community are not going to be solved by people who view themselves as an extension of the militia or the military, who view the people in their community as the enemy, who roll up with camo and weapons of war, and in many communities, tanks, because they view their people as the enemy. That's the problem. We've allowed a mentality within law enforcement to take hold, which is basically a militaristic mentality. And we can't be surprised when other people in the community decide, well, we're going to come and we're going to deputize ourselves to help the cops. And we're going to have and then, they work together. So we're seeing it all over the country as the cops just sort of sit back and allow right-wing forces to attack progressive forces, because as far as the cops are concerned, well, the progressive forces are critiquing us. And so if you're going to critique us, we're not going to protect you, which is an abdication of their job responsibility. They should all be fired on the spot for that. Leave, quit your job. You don't want to be criticized. You're too much of a snowflake to be criticized, but you're a bad enough man to have a gun. You can have a gun and the power of arrest, but you can't take criticism. You need to find a new career.
Yeah. Talk to me about the history of law enforcement and the black populations that they've been policing in this country, because it never gets old to be reminded of the specifics, and a lot of people really just aren't familiar with it. And the only thing I would submit before you answer that is law enforcement is a choice. And I tend to generalize about people in their jobs and in their careers. And maybe that's not fair, but it's not as if it's an immutable characteristic like gender or race or a disability of some sort. It's a career choice that we're talking about. In the history of this country, that career, law enforcement, has done what and meant what to the black population of this country?
Well, look, I mean, this is the thing that if you're going to be a responsible cop, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? If you're going to do law enforcement for the right reason, you need to know the answer to that question. That's not just an important question for you and I to discuss and for activists to know. It's important. If I want to be a cop and I want to be a decent one and actually do a good job and protect the public and contribute to public safety, it might really help me to realize that the history of my institution is a history that traces directly to the deliberate subordination of black people. I mean, it's not hyperbole, it's not ideology, it's not leftist, revisionist history to suggest that policing is literally an extension of the slave patrols. And at every iteration of law enforcement, it was about controlling the have-nots who were disproportionately of color, as well as controlling poor whites as well. It was always about dominating those with less on behalf of those with more. It's one of the reasons that the rich had slave patrols, right? They would hire like the penniless white guy and make them go out and patrol. If you were rich enough, you got out of the slave patrol. Just like if you were rich enough, you didn't have to go fight in the Civil War, right? You could get some poor person to go do that for you. And the same is true now. Well, what are cops today? They tend to be working class, lower middle class or middle class. They don't make a ton of money. They end up having to go do dangerous jobs at the behest of the people with property who don't actually want to pay them well because they look down on them as well. They're being used as a buffer, right, between black and brown and low-income white folks and the elite. And that's always been the history. Now, if you want to be a different kind of cop than that, if you don't want to be the cop that is engaged in essentially slave patrolling, if you don't want to be the cop who's doing the racially disproportionate war on drugs, if you don't want to be the cop who's dragging sit-in protesters off the stools in Nashville and in Greensboro and in Jackson and all the places where that happened in the 1960s, then fine. But A, you got to know that history, and you have to be accountable to that because the black folks you patrol know that history. Right? They're aware of your role, and they, as a result, have a natural skepticism. Why would we expect black people to look at cops with a positive attitude until proven otherwise, when the history is negativity until proven otherwise? And so, number one, know the history, and number two, make sure that you're willing to challenge your colleagues on that history. We always talk about the bad apples. The problem is there aren't enough good ones who are willing to actually stand up. Right. Because why? When they do, they're the ones who get run out of policing. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
A couple guys in Baltimore that I know you've interviewed, at least a couple of one of them, if not both, that were went into policing in Baltimore for the right reason. And one of them came from a whole family of law enforcement. Mom and dad both had been cops. They'd both been in the military. They wanted to be police for all of the right reasons, but because they turned in or informed on others of their brotherhood and sisterhood in blue and said, look, there's brutality, there's corruption, there's racism. I'm watching this. I'm seeing it every day. They were the ones who ultimately got run out of policing. What does that tell you? It tells you that the institution is rotten, that the orchard is rotting. There may be individuals who want to do right, but if the orchard is rotting, you have to dig up the trees and replant. And that's the problem in this country, is we're not doing that.
One of my favorite quotes just about life in general is we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. And a lot of times when we see these police shootings, these videos, it's almost exclusively white people will say, if they just would have listened to the cop, they wouldn't be dead. They wouldn't be paralyzed. They wouldn't have gotten shot. If they just would have submitted to the police officer's demands, everything would have been fine. It's very easy for a lot of people to just look at these videos and say, it's that guy's fault. He should have just listened to the cop.
Right. Except that we know that doesn't work. I mean, Philando Castile asked for permission to show the officer his gun permit because he knew the gun was going to be found, and he wanted to say, look, I have a permit, let me get it, and he was shot. Breonna Taylor was just trying to sleep. So, I mean, Ahmaud Arbery was just running for a jog in the neighborhood, and he was apprehended by vigilantes who wanted to see his papers, which again, we're always asking black people for proof that they belong. Do we not understand what that is? Like asking black people to prove that you belong in this space, in this Starbucks, in this voting booth, in this White House. Prove that you actually have the right to be here. And then when I ask you for that, you shouldn't get offended. But of course, that's something that only white people can say because we're never the ones who are having to submit to that level of authority. And then even when we do, this is the kind of thing that happens. John Crawford was shot in the Walmart outside of Dayton, wasn't given time to quote unquote submit. Tamir Rice was not given time to submit. The cop said he had been, and he lied. He said, I said drop the gun, which was a toy gun, of course. And it was 2 or 3 seconds later that he pointed the gun at me and I shot him. Well, that was a lie. We've seen the video. He didn't point anything. No 12-year-old is going to point a toy gun at a cop who I gather he knows has a real one. Like no one is going to do that. But the police officer said that, which was a lie, did not face any criminal punishment as a result of that. So the idea that if you just submit, everything will be fine isn't true. Not only that, of course, it begs the question, why should I have to submit to your frivolous desire to search me, to stop me, to ask me questions? I have a right not to be questioned by you. Yeah. You don't have a right to just stop me on the street for any damn reason and ask me questions. We have a Fourth Amendment that says that you don't don't have a right to do that. I have constitutional guarantees, but what white people are saying is if you're black, you should be considered suspect until proven otherwise. And if you just wouldn't act up, everything would be okay. That isn't true. We've seen it isn't true, and it isn't constitutional. And these people that say this are the same ones who say that having to wear a mask in Costco violates their constitutional right. Having to stay 6 feet away from somebody at Trader Joe's is a violation of their constitutional right. But asking black people to prove that they belong in a neighborhood is somehow legitimate.
Or they're constantly talking about law and order. And if the law and the order is to wear a mask, well, we like the law and order that we like, not the one we don't. I mean,
we like the law. Like exactly. The whole point is law and order historically was about subordinating those people. Right. So as long as law and order is being used to subordinate the right people, we love it. But if law and order is being used to actually restrict what we can do,
infringe on my rights, it's not OK. Infringe on theirs, it's law and order. Right. Yeah. Well said. I mean, also, the other thing is, when you talk about the right to not be searched, I've been reading a lot and preparing for to talk with some folks down in New Orleans, which you know a lot about. I'm trying to do a special for the 15th anniversary of Katrina. And the incarceration rate in Louisiana is the highest in the country, and the country is the highest in the world, of course, America. But so many of these horrific stories are about black men being pulled over for staying, in one case, too long at a stop sign, or any other number of issues, including even if they are, in fact, illegal. But they get pulled over some minor infraction. You can think of Sandra Blonde here. And then they find a little bit of weed or a little bit of cocaine on them. The consequences for their life after that are something that most of us can't even comprehend, because they have these 3 strikes laws. You get caught with a little bit of marijuana 2 or 3 times, your whole life and your family's life is destroyed. And as I read about those, I'm always and I always have to say this, and now it sounds douchey, but I have so much weed on me most of the time. And I never, ever think about it. I'm growing it here. I'm going to put a plant in my new studio just for shits and giggles. Like, it's legal, or even if it's not, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not getting in trouble for it. And God forbid if I did, I would have resources to get out of it and wouldn't be stuck in jail. Right. So these searches and seizures destroy entire lives and have for generations in this country.
And for what? For what? I mean, what is the real, the vast majority of stops are these pretextual stops. Fund
law enforcement. That's what for. It's not, taxpayers don't want to pay. Even racist people don't want their taxpayer money going to putting, people in jail for weed.
Right. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And, we know from the data, there's been research now. There's a book that came out a couple of years ago. I can't remember the title, but 20 million stops in the state of North Carolina that they looked at. And the evidence was overwhelming. Number one, that it was racially disparate against black motorists. But number two, that most of the time they were finding stuff on white motorists, not on black motorists, not on Latinx motorists, but on white motorists. So in other words, they're not even searching in the right place, right? The white folks are the ones who have whatever it is you're looking for, but you keep stopping black people. Now, either you just have real bad short-term memory, like you forget, like, oh my God, I keep stopping Jose and I keep stopping the black folks, but it's really, Chad over there that has the weed and the weapons. Like, you can't keep that straight. Or it isn't really about drugs, right? It isn't really about crime. It's about controlling certain people. And I want to go back real quick because I remembered after we got on this question, the point about why don't they submit? Why don't they just
yeah. Well, that's back to my quote. We see things because most of us do. We are more likely. I think white people are more likely to take the order, and that's how we see things. But a black person's life is seen like if you submit, you might not go home tonight. Is what I'm thinking.
And this is why the state of Massachusetts, interestingly, several years ago, there was a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court of the state of Massachusetts, and the Supreme Court of that state decided and ruled, it is the law there, that you cannot use a black man in particular running from police as a pretext to stop and search them, because it is rational, according to the Massachusetts State Supreme Court, for a black male to run from police. That is literally considered by the court.
Really? I never heard that.
Understandable decision that you cannot use that alone in and of itself. That cannot be the basis for a stop or a search. If a black man, and maybe black folks generally, but I know it applied to black males, they basically said it is understandable that you would be afraid. And if you did something else that, creates reasonable suspicion, then they can stop you. But if all you did, like if I'm a cop and I come upon you and you're a black male and you turn around and head the other way, or you sort of run off in the other direction, if I don't have any other reason to stop you and the only thing is you ran from me or you tried to avoid me, I do not have the right in the state of Massachusetts, according to the Supreme Court, to stop you. That should be understood by everyone, because it is rational. It is rational.
Massachusetts High Court says black men may have legitimate reason to flee police, citing Boston police data and a 2014 report by the ACLU of Massachusetts that found blacks were disproportionately stopped by the city's police. The state's highest court on Tuesday threw out a gun conviction. Wow. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm talking to you. I never heard that, Tim. That's very interesting.
People haven't, but I mean, it's one of those things where you begin to realize there are jurists who understand. And in this case, the Supreme Court of the state saying, look, you got to have a better reason than that.
Yeah.
Because my thing has always been, if this could be inaccurate as well, but my thing has always been for black folks to turn around when they see a cop and head the other direction, to me, has always seemed rational, even if that person did nothing. On the other hand, when I see white folks who come across cops and they freak out, and they probably got something on them. To be honest, they're probably carrying, we're probably up to some shit, because I don't like cops, but I don't run. I don't necessarily freak out. But when I see white folks who do, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you probably did something. And I'm sure that's wrong. I shouldn't assume that. But when black folks do it, I just assume that they've watched the news, and that they understand enough about what happens to black folks who are harassed by cops, that they know they're better off to turn around and go. And in New York City, under stop and frisk, one of the number one reasons, they used to have to fill out forms that said why they were stopping people. And a lot of times they didn't do it. But in theory, they were supposed to fill out a form. And the form they filled out, it wasn't because they were investigating violent crime. It wasn't because they were investigating a robbery at the liquor store. It was because they were, furtive movements was the terminology that the NYPD. A furtive movement is literally anything I do to avoid you.
Right.
And again, if it's the state of Massachusetts, all those cases are getting thrown out because it's not considered. There's a good logical reason to engage in furtive movement if you're a black male and you're encountering cops. And if cops don't like that, they need to stop shaking down black folks. And then perhaps those stops could be legitimate. But until they do that, they're not legitimate.
I had an interesting Blue Lives Matter moment yesterday I wanted to get your take on, where I was just driving home in my community and four police officers on motorcycles were driving by, and I immediately recognized this as some kind of a funeral procession. And so traffic stopped for maybe 5 or 7 minutes. It was a long time to be just sitting there, and a bunch of hearses and huge limousines went by. And I asked the guy who had stopped traffic, I go, what is this? And it was the funeral of a police officer who had died of natural cause, he's an old man. And they were just celebrating his life. It wasn't as if he was shot in the line of duty, which, of course, they have a major situation then with a horse-drawn carriage and white glove, and their dress blues and the 5-gun salute and all of that. My point about that is always, everybody knows the police lives matter. Everybody knows that. I was stopped in traffic yesterday for a guy's funeral. Who died because he served on the police force for a career. Fine. But the idea that their life doesn't matter, I had to stop and wait for all these cops and the family to go by because of the tribute, which, by the way, takes resources to fund. I mean, it's community resources, pay for all those cops, pay for that funeral, pay for the death benefits and so on, especially when their lives are ended on the line of duty. The idea that they have to scream Blue Lives Matter is, right. I don't know. It just thought that was I haven't mentioned that.
Yeah, we don't have those processions when teachers die of a heart attack. We don't have those processions when nurses and doctors and frontline healthcare workers die of a heart attack. And it's not to disrespect. Look, this guy served with distinction. Perhaps he was a great guy. I don't know. Who knows, right? But like you said, he wasn't even killed in the line of duty. And we're making a production out of his funeral, which if you want to do that and
fine,
whatever,
no one's faulting
fine.
you for it, but it's the counter argument to the idea that they're saying Blue Lives Matter, which of course is as a reaction result to Black Lives Matter, which
it's taken It is taken for granted that blue lives. Well, first of all, we know it is because here's the thing. And I had a talk in Louisville via Zoom a week and a half ago or so. And I made the point there, if Breonna Taylor or her boyfriend, who was in the room when the cop came in and shot at them, if Breonna Taylor or her boyfriend had broken into the house of a cop at night and shot the cop, a couple things we know would be true. Number one, they would have been arrested and we wouldn't be waiting for a fact-finding mission to determine whether or not a homicide charge could stick. And if the cop, in response to Breonna Taylor or her boyfriend shooting them, breaking into his house, had shot in self-defense, as Breonna Taylor's boyfriend did, thinking that they were just having their place broken into by some random stranger, nobody would have blamed the cop for doing that. No one would have said, we need to arrest you until we can figure out if it was legitimate self-defense. But in this case, when the cop does the shooting, we don't arrest, and we end up arresting the boyfriend for shooting back in self-defense. So those charges up to now they've been dropped, at least temporarily. They could bring them back. But the point being, that demonstrates that we know blue life matters. It matters so much that you won't even treat cops the way you would any non-cop for the very same action. That's how you know that blue life is a default matter in this country and black life is not.
Well said. Have you been watching the RNC?
A little bit. Comic relief is always good.
The first two nights featured a lot of people of color speaking on behalf of Donald Trump. Most disappointingly, Herschel Walker, but others, many as well. And my reaction to it last night, I tweeted, the Trump campaign is spending a lot of time trying to win over black people. I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think it's working. And then I just tagged it with, also, fuck Mike Pence. But a better take, I tag most of my tweets with fuck Mike Pence. A better take, Tim, came from a smarter person. And I want to know, which of these two takes is more accurate. And if you have a different one at all, it's I don't think they're seriously trying to win over black voters. I think they're trying to convince undecided white people that Republicans aren't racist so they can remove that barrier from voting for him.
I think that's more likely. Although, look, this is an administration that actually, I think, honest to God, that both Trump and Prince Kushner of mayonnaise honestly believed that convincing Kanye to run would get black people, because black people would say, oh my God, Kanye, hip hop, let's vote for him, because they honestly think that's what black people are like.
Do you think they sat around and had a brainstorming session about what black person would be most influential in winning over black? Like, because did that start? You think that started with Kushner, or do you think that Kanye's always been flirting, or he's ran before? They probably just fueled his fire.
I think Kushner, who clearly, it doesn't take a genius to look at him and know that he doesn't know a lot of black people, and doesn't, like he is the whitest.
His
of white.
Tight suits.
His Vaseline forehead, the whole thing is just, but whatever. I honestly think they sat around and they thought, they also think Diamond and Silk appeal to black people.
Hey.
And these are people who act, he actually thinks his friendship with Don King over the years means something to black people. So I think there's part
Don King is a murderer, by the way.
Right, a murderer. Yeah, a murderer. But so I think there's part of them that actually thinks that is a way to appeal to black and brown folks. But I do think that more importantly, what they're trying to do is create just enough of a doubt in the minds of certain white folks. Hey, look, we're not the people that they tell you we are. You can vote for us and not endorse Nazis. You don't have to endorse the Charlottesville Tiki Torch riot people if you vote for us. But I don't think it's going to work, because look at who they are. They're first of all, the RNC the last couple of nights looked like, your typical college or university website that always has way more black people on the website than it has at the school. You know, like every college, Black folks joke about that. Like you get on the website and maybe 30% of the people on the pictures are Black folks. And they all have like a cardigan sweater tied around their neck and they're all laughing. There's like the Asian girl, the white guy, the Black guy. And they're all
I got in so much trouble once when I was performing, and you speak at a lot of colleges. I was doing stand-up at a college. I think it was Potsdam, which is way up in northern New York, right on the border of Canada almost, state school in New York. And I'm there performing, and in walks this Black kid, and I started talking to him. It was like there was no other people of color in the room, and I was like, "Oh, you're whatever student." He's like, "No, I'm actually on a tour right now." Like they were recruiting him.
Oh wow!
And I said something to the effect of "Don't do it" or something horrible like that. I got in a ton of trouble. But it was that point. Like they're trying to show the best. They're trying to act like there's a lot of diversity. And it happened at the college I went to as well. And I heard this from all the Black guys, that would always joke around. Like when they brought us up here, they try to create this atmosphere of diversity and welcoming. But it's just not the case once you get there.
And I think most people see through it. I mean, definitely Black folks see through it. Yeah. But I even think
although they get tricked. Oh,
some people do. But I think most people see through it. And I think even most white folks who see that from the RNC can see it for the game because they know this is the problem with having a reality TV guy as president. You know that everything is production value. You know that everything is scripted, that everything is an act. And so in part, he's less believable trying to pull this off than Reagan would have been, even though Reagan was an actor, but it was a different kind of thing, or Bush or anyone else. Like for him to do it, everything is so cynical. Everything is a lie. Everything is scripted. Everything is fraudulent, that the only people who really continue to buy into it are the people who are already bought into it. And they all think that there's a sex dungeon underneath Comet Pizza. So what the hell are you
Yeah. Help me unpack this idea. You can have Black people, people of color. We can talk about other ethnicities, Jewish people, gay people in your life that you truly love, respect, and welcome into your home. And still, you could be a white person and marry a Black person or a Jewish person and be racist, still be anti-Semitic. It is not, but so many people think, well, I'm not a racist or I'm not anti-Semitic. And we're all somewhere on the spectrum, let's be clear. Yeah. But what we're seeing at the RNC is Trump trotting out several Black folks from all different walks of life and backgrounds. Often it's entertainment and sports, but other government and academia as well, law enforcement and so on. And my reaction to all of that is you can know and have good relationships, in this case with people of color, and still be on the wrong side. And indulge me with one more of me reading my own tweets and then pick it up. But I said last night, I said, when you hear Trump and his 4 Black friends tout his accomplishments for Black people, remember, Republicans repealed much of what Martin Luther King, John Lewis, and millions of others accomplished. And now they're doing all they can to prevent Black people from voting. The point being, you can trot out as many Black people as you want to speak on your behalf. If you're taking away their rights, on the other hand, or most of the day, what does that make you?
Well, it makes you a racist. I mean, first of all, here's the thing. If everyone who was in the civil rights movement and is still alive is against you, everyone. Alveda King, by the way, was not in the movement. She was a little child. She is the niece of Dr. King. She was not marching. She was not in Selma.
Is she a Republican or something?
Yeah, she's the one that's like the anti-abortion one who, and she's in the King family and everybody trots her out because her last name is King. Therefore, this is the legacy of Dr. King. Right. No, actually, his kids are, and his kids are all really clear about where their dad would have stood. But anyway, if John Lewis and C.T. Vivian and Joseph Lowry we buried this year were very clear, then essentially for you to believe that Donald Trump is on the side of this struggle, you have to think that the people who literally shed their blood for the rights of Black folks in this country know less about that struggle than Donald Trump, who was marching around a military academy that his dad sent him to because he hated his guts so badly, that he knows better than those people. Secondly, to your point about knowing people and that somehow getting you out of the allegation of being racist, listen, we talked about this before. If that were enough to make a white person not racist because they have a black friend, dated an Asian woman, have a dream catcher in their rearview mirror, and have a great grandmother who's a Cherokee princess, or whatever the hell it is we say. If that were enough, then the fact that men who are heterosexual date and marry and sleep with women would ipso facto prove we can't be sexist. That's an insane thing to say. Nobody would say it. No guy would be like, oh, you think I'm sexist? Well, I can't be sexist because I have a wife. And if men would say it, our wives would set us straight on that, and our girlfriends and female partners would set us straight, and our friends would. So the idea that your closeness, I mean, this woman that spoke at the RNC, Abby, whatever her name, the anti-abortion woman who has a black adopted child, and she openly called for him to be racially profiled a couple of months ago on her YouTube channel. She said, well, my little adopted son is black, and the statistics say that he's more likely to commit crime. So if they profile him, I guess that's okay. Yeah. Well, she's a racist, and she's raising a black child. Yeah. I mean, what does that tell you?
That tells me how unbelievably disturbing that woman and everything she represents is. Speaking of disturbing, what about Melania Trump last night? Some folks and political analysts on TV were giving her a lot of credit for her speech, but a lot of people will never get past Melania Trump being a birther. I mean, it starts and ends there with many of us, certainly me. I don't care what she does or what she says, as long as she doesn't denounce that, much less her husband's actions, then it doesn't matter if she gives a good speech, and she didn't give a good speech. I'm just saying.
No, I mean, the only thing good about it is she didn't steal it from Michelle Obama this time.
No way.
That was so what? You didn't plagiarize a speech and then we give you 5 stars for that? I mean, this is someone who lied about being a genius to get into the country on an Einstein visa or whatever. This is someone who was a birther who called into question the provenance of the former president. Why does anybody have sympathy for this person? I mean, we could say, oh, she's a hostage to Donald Trump. No, she's not. Yeah. He didn't kidnap her and make her marry his pathetic ass. She did that very voluntarily. Right. So I have very little sympathy for her. I hope that, this story is true, that there's going to be this tape recorded conversations that are going to come out about the rest of the family.
Can't wait. Cannot wait.
Nothing better than a little internecine, civil war in the Trump clan, with a K.
She played a very small role in my marriage. She was a bit player.
Right, of course. So, I mean, the fact that we set the bar so low for these people, because the only reason her speech looked good is because it was after, Kim Guilfoyle was screaming at us all. And it was, and then implying that her mother, who's from Puerto Rico, is an immigrant because she's not smart enough to realize that that's part of America.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize her mother was. I didn't realize any of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. She said that her mother, was an immigrant. She was the proud child of an immigrant parent. Her mom's from Puerto Rico. It's not an immigrant. Your mom's an American. So Google that shit. Like, it's not real complicated, but So she's, as I said on Twitter, she's reverted to type when she started dating Don Jr. She was smarter when she was dating Gavin Newsom and married to him, I suppose. But in any event, now she's sort of, gone back to, I don't know. So the only reason that Melania looked smart or looked good is it was compared to that, or Pam Bondi talking about nepotism before 3 Trumps in a row were going to be speaking, talking about Joe Biden's nepotism, and that it was all following the individual people who they trotted out, like the one guy who said Joe Biden is hiding in the basement waiting to kill our babies. I mean, the standard is set low because the clown car is full. The clown car is overflowing, and therefore when Melania comes along, you're like, oh, she can actually keep the car in the lane.
The bar is so low. You're absolutely right. What a circus it's been. Yeah. What was I was just thinking of something that I wanted to remind you about and give your take on, and I've completely forgotten it. I was so into what you were saying. Not good. I got to write things down. Tim Wise, it's so good to talk to you, as always, to catch up, to get your analysis on all the most recent stories. And we didn't really get to too many solutions today, but you helped us understand where a lot of these problems and are rooted from. But I will talk to you very soon, I hope, again, and I appreciate it as always, pal.
Sounds good. Next time I'll be in my office. I'll have books behind me. I will look much smarter and more literate.
Yeah, Tim's in a hotel room and looks like he's a hostage. But good luck with your talk, and thank you for talking with me, pal.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, so I'm plugging all the normal stuff on the way in and out on the show notes, right? And now also pre-ordering the book as well. All right. Tim Wise on Twitter, by the way, at Tim Jacob Wise. And you should pre-order his new book. It's called Dispatches from the Race War. Get all of Tim's books. So great. Always love talking with Tim. And now it's time to talk to my good friend Wajahat Ali, who made a major announcement today about a project that he has been working on for a long time. He tweeted, "I'm excited to announce the We Will Emerge project. We've been working on this since April at PEN America. Over 100 writers, poets, academics, and activists came together to imagine how we will emerge as a country from this current crisis." So check that out. You can see that at Waj's Twitter handle, or just look up We Will Emerge. But he is at Wajahat Ali on Twitter. He's a contributing op-ed writer to the New York Times. You should watch his TED Talk. He has become a very close personal friend, like a brother to me. I deeply love and respect him and his work, and I'm always excited when he joins the show, which I try to make happen every week. Here's our latest conversation, and it is a good one, as always, right now. Hey.
Hey, now I got you.
That was me. It was on me.
It's all you. How you doing?
Well, I have a really important question to ask you, and I want you to think long and hard about the answer.
What's up?
When the race war begins, where does it leave me? Your expression alone was like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Sorry. Sorry, Whitey.
Because you can blend in and use your whiteness to camouflage with the Boogaloo Boys. And it's like The Walking Dead, right? You can be one of the zombies if you just like shuffle your feet and groan and put You're saying that you'll use me as a spy? No, I'm saying for your safety. Well, that's the second step. But for your safety, you have to realize you're a race traitor because you like the darkies and you empower the darkies. So they'll want to kill you. So in order to save yourself, you can also pose as one of them. But then the black people, the people of color will then kill me. Yeah, and so they'll have the right to. So that's the thing. That's why you got to make a decision quick. What side are you on? I know what side I'm on, but I'm stuck in between because of the scenario you just laid out. Yeah, but you're still white, so it'll be fine. You can believe me, that's what I keep telling myself when I wake up in the morning in this skin. It's what am I gonna do? The white supremacists don't like me. Some black people don't like me. Oh, I'm white, and then you just go have Kool-Aid or do what white people do. You know what I keep thinking though also is all this talk of like civil war and civil unrest and the violence and stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of an optimist or an idealist, but I don't buy it being widespread. I think that we're going to continue to see violence at these kind of protests and these types of situations where people go out kind of looking for it or knowing that they're going to put themselves in harm's way to some extent. I don't see it coming to the suburbs and people, setting my house on fire. And I don't see even like the Proud Boy white supremacists. Those guys are mostly guys that don't have a lot to live for, or they're young and single. Like, I just don't see the racist white guy who's just really racist going out and killing people, because you know why? This guy that did that last night in Wisconsin, he's going to jail now. I don't think people generally want to kill other people, even if they're filled with hate. And if they do, they don't want to get caught. What do you think? Am I being too much of an idealist here? I don't see a lot of, these racist white people wanting to go out and kill people and destroy their own lives as long as there's still some justice, like there is going to be for this kid. Yes. And no, the Charleston church, shooter, he's in jail the rest of his life. Like, it doesn't. Yeah, so this guy's Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old. Oh, you said his name. Who brought a gun to a demonstration along with other armed whites who dressed up like militia members, and seemingly, based on what we know right now, were kind of working in tandem with the police. So who brings assault rifles to a peaceful demonstration if they're not really, like looking to start some trouble. And also just to show you how white privilege exists, I just can't even imagine black and brown people in that tense environment, just a bunch of them with camouflage, carrying freaking assault rifles, or bringing assault rifles to Michigan State House and yelling without a mask in front of the face of a police officer and shutting down a state house and nothing happening to them. The reason why I'm a bit more cynical is because I think violence will happen, regardless.
Well, it is happening, right? Like
it's going to happen. So your whole is it going to be like the scale is going to be a full-on race war. So that's what the Boogaloo Boys, the armed white protesters, white power movements want. They want full-on race war. I do agree most people are just too lazy. I think most people are too cowardly. And I think most of these people, like we saw with the Tiki Torch whites with the bad haircuts, once you like shame them, they whine like little bees, right? They're like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know that my face would be all over social media. Yeah. I regret it. I just thought it was for freedom. So I think most of them are these like weak, pathetic, impotent, insecure incels, but all you need is a few. And if you look at the trajectory of violence and domestic terrorism, the number one domestic terror threat in America, according to the FBI, is white supremacist terrorists and those who are affiliated with it. Now, if you really care about law and order, because I saw the RNC because I'm a masochist, I have to write about it for the New York Times. Law and order, coded language, the suburbs, or you saw the McCloskeys, like broke ass Bonnie Clyde come out. It's all coded language, right? That the blacks and the darkies are coming and replacing you, whites. You saw, if you really cared about law and order, I did not hear a single word, Pete, about the Boogaloo Boys, who in June killed 2 police officers in California, committed acts of terrorism. The Boogaloo Boys are now a far-right fringe white supremacist group, right? And I wonder if Donald Trump, the man who took out an ad in New York to call for the death penalty against the Central Park 5 boys who were wrongfully convicted of rape. To this day, Pete, he still hasn't said that they're innocent. Is he going to say anything about Kyle Rittenhouse? Is he going to say anything about the Boogaloo Boys? In fact, I think he will promote them. He has invited Marjorie Greene Taylor, that nut we talked about last time, QAnon, anti-Semite, racist, who's most likely going to represent Georgia in the House, to the White House.
Mostly she hates Muslims, it would seem.
Jews.
Oh, I thought she was. Are we talking about the same person? This the one?
Yeah, Marjorie. That's Laura Loomer. It's the Venn diagram kind of just.
If you hate the Jews, you usually hate the Muslims.
But the point is, like, look, QAnon. The reason why I'm just pushing back on you a little bit is QAnon is a domestic terror threat, according to the FBI. Last year, they said that they predicted that QAnon, and their prediction turned out to be right, would radicalize individuals and groups leading up to 2020, potentially causing violence. QAnon is now a mainstream part of the Republican Party. And so my warning to my fellow Americans, and I hope I am wrong, is that no matter what happens in the 2020 election, the Republican Party and the right-wing ecosystem will radicalize and weaponize. You're not going to get the huge swaths of suburban losers. I agree with you. But you just need a few. And if you have a few who are armed and enabled by the president and mainstreamed, is that not dangerous?
It's dangerous. I just think, and I don't think you're wrong. I just think I don't like the word civil war. I think or race war. Those words imply and create a certain type of a vision that I do not think we're going to see, which doesn't minimize that there is going to be increasing violence, as there has been for the last since 9/11. It's been almost entirely white supremacists and anti-government right-wingers who have committed the violence. So there's been plenty of violence and plenty of death, but I just don't.
They haven't been mainstream. They haven't been. This is the thing. They were always fringe. And even the Republican Party, even though they knew it was part of the right-wing ecosystem, in 2009, Daryl Johnson, who was part of the DHS, created this report, literally warning the government that this is the new front of domestic extremism, right-wing terrorism. What happened to that report? Got buried. Why did it get buried? By pressure from Republicans and right-wing groups who said this will make us look bad. So this goes back to 2009. So, but they at the same time knew it was fringe. Now what I'm telling you, it's mainstream. It is a mainstream for the first time, where QAnon and Trump is the face of the mainstream conservative movement. And like we've talked about before, in 2016, what did they label the 2016 election as? The Flight 93 election, charge the cockpit. So if they lose, which I think they're going to lose, this is my prediction, I think Trump's going to lose. Will they moderate? I have not seen a single piece of evidence, Pete, and I want to be proven wrong, that shows that the entire conservative movement, the Republican Party, has moderated. Anything and everything that I've seen, just in the past week alone, shows me that they have gone full tilt MAGA, full tilt extreme. And so what happens in November when Donald Trump loses and he has paved the way with the talking points that everything is rigged and everything is part of the deep state, and he has already tweeted to his armed militia members, rise up in Michigan, right? Rise up in the other cities. All it takes is a few tweets, and you can get violence in small pockets in cities across America. Now, is it enough to be a civil war where it's like the Unions versus like the Confederate? I don't think so. But does it show a frayed fabric of America where the racialization of everything is weaponized to the point where you have an entire GOP political party that is now not doing dog whistles, but it's straight up with a bullhorn, basically talking about white supremacy. But we're about to see what's going to happen. 6 months.
But how do you react to this kid who murdered these people last night in Wisconsin being arrested within, a very short amount of time of the murder? Like, if he had gotten away with it, like this morning, my whole morning was destroyed. I was so upset by watching the video of this guy shooting people and then walking right up to the police and walking past them as he's strapped with a gun.
That's right.
It was so outrageous watching the police thank those guys for being there and giving them bottles of water. All of that was so outrageous. But the guy got caught. He's in jail now. Like, doesn't that mean something? What it means to me is, if you're a stupid young incel who wants to travel across your state to get to another state where there's unrest and be a vigilante, maybe you shouldn't do it. Because if you commit a crime, if you kill somebody, you're going to get caught and go to jail. Like, these people are generally, these white supremacists that kill people almost always get caught and go to jail.
But the flip side to that is the following. Two flips to that is, if you have the president and if you have your chosen one in the White House, you're Eddie Gallagher, a Navy SEAL, a murderer, a war criminal who gets pardoned.
Yeah.
And now becomes the hero.
Yeah.
Also, if you are seeking martyrdom, and if you believe, like they do, that they are protagonists of a cosmic narrative, that they are the Paul Reveres, that they have to go in and do the dirty work to wake up the white race before it is exterminated. If they leave behind, videos and manifestos, then they are seeking that martyrdom. They're seeking to be arrested. They're seeking to be in the spotlight. And we're talking about the anniversary of the Christchurch terrorist, the man who, Brendan Tarrant, who went and killed.
You said his name.
Yeah, the guy who went and killed 51 Muslims, right? And in his manifesto, he repeats the talking points of the modern GOP, the replacement theory, right? That's exactly what the midterm 2018 election was, that the Jews, most likely George Soros, were funding the invasion of Mexicans and Middle Easterners to come and attack Western civilization. That was the only talking point of Donald Trump. And in his pamphlet that he left behind, Pete, who did he say was the renewed symbol of white identity with whom he shares a common purpose? Donald Trump. And so my take on this is, we're not going to see like every suburban white, every conservative, every Republican, sign up for the race war. But if this is mainstreamed, and you have armed whites casually just walking with guns, shooting people, kind of with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge with the police, and this is happening more and more and more, I mean, how many cities now are going to be like what we've witnessed in Wisconsin? It's going to be more and more frequent. And my fear is that once Trump loses, even if he wins or loses, what happens if he wins? That's what people aren't talking about. Do you think American people are going to take it? 250,000 dead, most likely by November, the recession, evictions. Like, people aren't, like, my friends were cynical. I'm like, just wait to September, October, man. Those checks ain't coming. More industries are going to falter. You saw what the airlines who got the bailouts happened. They just got billions of dollars, and just what happened? They just fired thousands of employees. There's going to be evictions. Schools are going to close. If you look at I think what's North Carolina, all these students already got coronavirus.
UNC, Notre Dame.
Yeah, UNC. It's going to be wild, man. So imagine if Trump cheats, which he told us he would do, and he squeaks out a win. Don't you think there's going to be some violence?
Yes, I do. But I don't think even those of us who are absolutely outraged and terrified of the continuation of this authoritarian autocrat insane person are going to kill other people. I don't think that we're going to take up arms and fight. We'll go out in the streets and we'll protest, and maybe we'll be met by the Proud Boys and their guns. But I don't know. I don't see the progressive or the anti-Trump.
It's all about escalation. If you have armed militia and Proud Boys working in tandem with local police, let's say in Portland, just saw it last week, Proud Boys, which is the most hilarious name for these grown-ass men, right, came with the explicit, deliberate, overt intention to cause disruption.
Yeah.
Came armed. And they're beating up people, and the police are sitting there and watching it. And many of them are pounding the police and throwing up white power signs. And if you see communities that finally get shot and killed and the police are not doing anything, along with the coronavirus pandemic that will kill 250,000 people, along with a debilitating recession, along with lack of faith in our institutions, that is a tinderbox where, we think, the average Jose won't do it, but it's real quick, man. It's just a snap of the fingers for someone to radicalize, for someone to snap. And this is why I've said that I think Putin won, because Putin and our enemies abroad, including violent extremists, including ISIS, they wanted Trump to win. People forget this. Why? Because they said Trump is our chaos agent. He will exploit the existing fissures in America. ISIS said, look, Trump, look, Muslims, we told you the West hates Islam. Look, they're going to elect Trump. They hate you. Rise up against the West. And look at Putin. He knows he can't destroy us, but if you can exploit
in conventional way,
there you go. If you can attack the truth, if you can attack reality, if you can attack the news, the judiciary, the elections, if nobody knows what's real, and you see chaos, and you see a race war, are we not effed? Chasing our own tails? Like, will our country not burn? I mean, if you talk to folks looking at America right now, it's not, people aren't happy. People are terrified, and they're taking pity on us. We're the epicenter of coronavirus. We elected Donald Trump. They're looking at the RNC. They're seeing QAnon. They're seeing protesters in the street. They're seeing black people unarmed being shot and killed. They're like, what's happening to this country? And that's where you have a tinderbox where it might not be like 3 million versus 3 million out on the streets, but you also got to take into account that armed militias have been preparing for this moment. They want the race war.
They're not going to get it. That's what I'm saying. They're not. These armed militias, like I don't. That's their hobby and their interest, and they love hanging out together and showing up at some of these protests. But they don't actually end up in their heart of hearts. I don't know that they actually really want to kill people, or that they do. They have something to live for. I think they're a bunch of phonies. I really do. There are a few of them, often on their own, that commit violence. But I think they're mostly just weekend warriors. It's their fantasy football. It's just a poisoned ideology. It's their hobby. They get together in their militia fucking weekends and they dress up and they cosplay, but they don't actually kill. They don't actually want to kill anybody. You know why? Because Monday through Friday, they work at an insurance company and they go to their kids' dance class or whatever. They don't want to destroy their own lives for their cause. They don't.
So my pushback to that is twofold. Number one, if you, I don't know if you have had him on, but the author of Dying of Whiteness, I think Jonathan Metzl.
Yeah,
right?
I've had Metzl. Yep, he's great.
So Jonathan spent time with the angry whites. He's a white himself. He talked to them, and Pete's laughing.
I just love when you say
my favorite was moderate white, but he spent.
No one ever says whites. They almost never do. I love the way that you use it. It's. Great. Go ahead. He spent time with the whites.
He spent time with the angry whites, the Rust Belt whites, the MAGA whites, talked to them. And using the data, he concluded that whites are willing to give up 6 to 8 years of their life to maintain whiteness. hence the title of his book, Dying for Whiteness. Now, this is where I think...
But his thesis is that they support policy ideas that, in this case, are like healthcare ideas that end up being bad for their own health. It's not walking into a fire or walking into a civil war, I don't think. They don't even know. They don't know that they're choosing these policy choices. I feel like is his thesis.
I feel like they choose whiteness. Like when people say Republicans are always voting against their own interests, I always said no. If their interest is white supremacy, they're always voting for their interests.
I agree with you. You tweet about this a lot. What you're saying is that, and I totally agree with you, but I think we might part ways in one big way. They will die for their whiteness. They will die to keep their communities, their families homogenous. I get that, but I don't think they will take up arms for it. I think they will vote for people who will create segregationist policies. I don't think that they actually want to fight other people. I think they're all talk, mostly talk, except for the few that are very dangerous and murderers.
Where I agree with you mostly, the reason why I'm more skeptical and the reason why I hope to be proven wrong is the reason why they're already like semi-radicalized, but not weaponized. Let me put it that way. They're radicalized, well said. But not weaponized.
Yes, they're not even semi-radical. They're mostly at this point. Come on. I mean.
Yeah. So, okay. So my fear is that in the next year or two, they will weaponize. It's a next gradual step. Why? If you feel that you are actively being replaced, if you see that RNC and you just, I wish people saw it because you get, if you and I consume right-wing media, but a lot of people don't. They get that 24/7. It's catnip for the base.
Yeah.
It's like they are coming after you. That's pretty much it.
Oh, it's very effective. I watched today this Matt Walsh. You ever watch him?
Oh yeah.
Oh boy, is he dumb and bad and evil. And what he is saying is exactly what you're saying about the Democratic Party. He's talking about a race war. He is a
socialism,
monster.
Radical, your way of life, attack on religion. They're killing your babies. They're attacking the suburbs. They're taking your daughters. Okay, now, what does it take to get from radicalization to weaponization? Not much if you really feel that your life, your civilization, your child is under threat. What does QAnon say? There is a deep state conspiracy of globalist Jews using instruments of power and people of color to kidnap and rape and eat babies.
Well, that last part
isn't. No, I'm serious. I'm not even.
I know. No, Jeff Charlotte had a great piece about that, and anybody that talks to these people hears them say this crazy shit.
And they're going to the Congress next year, right? So if you are going to attack someone's baby, I'll give you one example. 2016, that nice, well-intentioned white guy who was in the right-wing ecosystem, who took his gun, traveled in his car to this pizza place right here in DC, which I've been to, and comes out with his gun, and he gets arrested, and they're like, what the F are you doing here with your gun? He goes, I'm here to save the kids. Clinton is keeping the kids in the basement. And so think about this. And that guy wasn't crazy. He goes, listen, man, I'm here to save the kids.
He was crazy.
No, he isn't crazy. So that's the funny thing is he was a very sane person who took very sane steps, and he sincerely believed that he was saving children. Now,
but when he showed up, there wasn't even a basement, and he didn't end up killing anybody. And my point,
he came with a gun, man. What I'm saying is, look how that guy who 3 years ago would have never done that got radicalized and weaponized and was willing to kill someone, shoot someone, because he thought he was doing a righteous act by saving children. So I'm telling you, you have a radicalized, millions of Americans radicalized, not weaponized yet. I believe many will weaponize. Let me put it this way. I believe some will weaponize. When you weaponize some in this environment and they literally feel like their backs are against the wall and you and me, Pete, are going to eat their children, what do you think is going to happen?
I don't see it going to that extreme. They're mostly radicalized. To support Trump is to be a real radical. They're not many of them are weaponized to the point. Many of them are weaponized, but what my point is they don't actually commit violence against other people with their weapons. They prepare.
Correct.
They prepare for their castle to be invaded. They prepare for their child to be eaten. They're ready for it, but no one's coming to invade their castle. No one's actually going to do anything to their kid. They think they might. They hear about it because everybody on right-wing talk radio, the NRA has been running ads that it's going to happen. Trump is saying they're coming to destroy your neighborhood. But my point is, it's not happening. No one's coming to destroy your neighborhood. They're not. They don't have a target except for very few who travel across their state to a protest like this kid did in Wisconsin. And there are some. I don't think that it's a mass amount of these radicals that are going to take up arms. I don't see the middle-aged guy like you and I, who has a family, who's getting a gun and going on the offensive.
I'll give you 3 pushbacks. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Yeah. 17-year-old guy yesterday came. Why? As a result of mostly black protesters coming out to demonstrate against the shooting of Jacob Black. All right, boom. I'll give you a second example. Charlottesville rally. The angry whites came. What happened? Heather Heyer was killed by a domestic terrorist. I'll give you a third example to push back against the slobbish middle-aged white with the gut. Remember when Fat Hawkeye got out of his car?
Yes. The guy in Minneapolis, I think, with the bow and arrow. Yeah. He seemed maybe pretty mentally disturbed.
And he was just driving his car, and then he just gets out with a bow and
he had issues. He was poor. He had nothing going on. You're naming people, I think, that are just, and I hate this word, but they're losers. They don't have a family and a job, and they can't get laid. So scary, and there's not that many of them. And there are a few, and maybe this is my whiteness talking, and I'm safe and my family's safe, so I'm not as worried or something. But I'm saying they will continue to be violent and kill people. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see it. Maybe I don't see it at the level that you see it happening.
Yeah, so I think we agree that if we're talking about the level, we're not going to see like 5 million of these guys come out, but we will see enough, and the damage they'll do is acceptable only because they're white. Imagine.
Yeah, I say that's happening now, but that's happening now. The damage that they are doing.
Look at Dylan Roof, if he was Muslim. Look at this guy yesterday, if he was Muslim. And suppose they did it for the sake of Allah. What would happen? We know what would happen. Look at Donald Trump. Muslim ban and zero tolerance policies and, hearings about the radicalization of Muslims. And I'd be on TV as a moderate Muslim apologizing for criminal acts done by people I've never met. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is increasing. And all it takes is sometimes is a few people to kill a dozen people in a church. It just took one Dylan Roof, right? And so you're absolutely right, though, that most of these guys are losers. If you look at, we've talked about this back in the day, if you look at the DNA of most violent extremists, it's fascinating how they're very similar. It's two sides of the same coin. ISIS recruits are very similar to white supremacists. We're looking at disaffected members of society who feel that they do not have a place, who usually online get radicalized, find both an ideology and community that gives them purpose and makes them the hero of this cosmic story, and says that there is an X group that is willing to come and take out their civilization. So they rationalize the use of violence because they believe there are heroes that are saving their romanticized vision of a past that never existed, whether that's the caliphate or whether that's Viking Valhalla, right? Very similar. So if with income inequality, with these people losing healthcare, with entitlements being cut, with coronavirus, with more and more people of color being elevated, and they feel like, as we've talked about before, a lot of Trump's base, it's mostly racial anxiety. They see equality as oppression. And you see an entire ecosystem that is run by QAnon or fueled by QAnon. Will we be surprised if we see one shooting a week?
I mean, that's what I am interested in talking about is the level of the violence, the type of the violence, the frequency of the violence. How do they? But again, I still look. I go back and look at many of the names that you mentioned. I mean, who's gotten away with it? They don't get away with it, even though a lot of police are obviously white supremacists, right-wing extremists themselves. They got a good job. It's a pretty secure job being a police officer as long as you don't fuck up. It's a great retirement. It's actually not even dangerous. It's not even the top 10 most dangerous jobs in almost every precinct in America. They might agree even with some white supremacist and what he did, but they're still going to arrest him. He's still going to be put through the court system in America in 2020, even with Donald Trump as president. They're still getting caught and arrested. And at the end of the day, I want to hang my hat on that. They're still being, when they commit these acts in open on camera. I'm not talking about the police. I'm talking about the extremists themselves. They get caught. They go to jail. They don't want that. I'm saying if a guy's got a family, I'm being repetitive, and a job, he doesn't want to go to jail for his stupid.
So my thing is yes, but if they're willing to die for their whiteness, maybe they'll take that step. If they're willing to be the hero of this narrative,
well, some of them are. Step. I'm saying it's just not at the.
And I feel like, and in a strange way, I was having this conversation with friends earlier today, and I hate saying this. We've talked about this theme again in America, right? It took the brutal murder of George Floyd, one of many murders of unarmed Black people, for America to say, this racism thing. It took the death of 80,000 of our fellow Americans to say, maybe we've kind of messed up on this pandemic. It took a recession the widening income inequality for people to finally say, there's something that should be done here with reform. It usually takes immense pain and suffering for Americans to wake up to the problem under their nose. And in a weird way, this is my hopeful point. As this violence increases and more people see these loser whites and angry whites and white supremacists do this and say this hateful stuff, I think it will motivate enough whites on the fence to join the majority and say enough is enough. That is my silver lining here. Like, as this increases and gets batshit crazier, I think enough whites will be like, the crazy darky Waj and that Muslim lover Pete, I think they're onto something. And that's where I feel, that's why this election is so important, man. You still need people in power, both in the House, the White House, and the Senate, that are at least willing to have that top-down narrative or tone, like that Biden released today, right? I don't know if you saw that video, which was a good video. He just released a video talking about the death of Jacob Black, and also then talking about his mom and the words his mom said. It was like a balancing act. But, you have to have that instead of rise up to the armed militia members of Trump. That's all I'm saying.
I have a do you hear that?
It's the white militia tapping your phone. I hear a little bit of
I feel like it's the siren test for like the nuclear power plant or some shit. But I don't know if you can hear it.
We probably need that also because there's an asteroid coming to Earth around Election Day.
Not going to come too close to us, is it?
No, it's coming close.
Oh, it hits my house.
Yeah.
It just vaporizes everybody. It's so morbid. Well, let's have a little hope in the conversation and talk about
the hope. Look at the Bucks today. That's good, right?
The what?
Bucks.
The Bucks?
The Bucks and the NBA teams are boycotting today.
Oh, wait, what is going on?
That just happened. So for those of you who are listening, we're just having this conversation. It's NBA playoffs, and the Bucks and the Magics are playing in the bubble. And Bucks, Milwaukee, apparently they said, "No, we're done. We're done just seeing Black people die." And the Magic said, "Yep, we're not gonna play this playoff game." And apparently their team said, "Yep, it's not gonna happen." And then all the other teams, including Chris Paul, I think, who's the leader of the President's Association, Oklahoma City is playing Houston Rockets. They boycotted. LeBron James says enough is enough. So now you're seeing Black players who aren't just going to shut up and dribble. They're going to speak out and flex. And I'm very curious to see, man, like if you're seeing the NBA playoffs, if you're seeing an entire league that is fueled and run by Black people say enough is enough and walk out of playoff games. And now they're saying that the Milwaukee Brewers, and baseball has been notoriously like a white sport, right? In America's pastime. Now they're saying that the Brewers might protest for solidarity with Black Lives Matter. That, I'm curious, will that move people? I think that's a positive step. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that sometimes things like this backfire and they just annoy people who are unaffected and don't care about such issues and just want people to play sports. 3 Game 5 set for Wednesday postponed after Bucks' decision not to take the floor. That is a massive and important and courageous move by those players and those teams who apparently are endorsing it. But I don't know. I think that I don't know what the result will be. What's been has there been a big reaction to it?
You and me are on the same page. I tweeted exactly that. I said I don't know. I said will people be on the fence, the whites on the fence? Will they be annoyed and say, shut the F up and go dribble? It's a pandemic. You get paid a lot, freaking Giannis. Or will it be a moment of reflection and empathy? remains to be seen. This is where I'm hopeful. This is where I think enough will come out and say moment of empathy. But it just happened as we're speaking. It's been it's trending everywhere. It's huge because it was just the Bucks and Magic, but then boom, half hour later, Rockets and OKC. Boom, I think it's gonna be Lakers also. And now it's moved to sports. It's moved to MLB.
It's I don't even know how to think about that. I don't think, because honestly, I'm a little bit speechless because I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. We saw Cap take a knee. Right. That was nothing compared to not playing, canceling the game in the playoffs. And during a pandemic, when people are really looking forward to these limited sporting events that are even available to them.
And even the athletes, man. The athletes are in the playoffs. Think about going to the championships, playoffs, endorsements. And even with Kaepernick, I mean, Kaepernick was kind of left. Remember, Kaepernick was canceled by everyone.
Yeah.
Kaepernick, I mean, I'm a 49er fan. I've seen every single Kaepernick game. That guy can still ball. Statistically, all these NFL fans say he won't be able to play, but it's bullshit, man. If you look at his stats, he right now is right in the middle of all quarterbacks in the NFL. And that guy has been blackballed from the NFL for about 3 years, right? And it was him and a handful of other players, but no one had his back. So Cap took the knee, but like you said, like no team was like, all right, Cap, we got your back. We're not going to play this game. Nope. Now you got the NBA and potentially the MLB. And, let's think about it this way. Like, you got 2 months left of the election. I feel things are going to ratchet up. You got the RNC again today. You already got Trump tweeting out law and order. Instead of talking about the death of the Jacob Black, the unarmed black man, they're talking about the same crap: law and order, riots, looting, code word, look at these blacks. You got 2 months until the election. I think, unfortunately, there's going to be more incidents of police brutality. I think maybe it'll take one or two more person like this 70-year-old guy who's going to show up. Where is the country going to swing? Is it going to move some people on the fence to say enough is enough? Or is it going to go in the opposite direction? And this is where I'll be the optimist. I remember my friend said, I remember we talked about this right after George Floyd's murder. My friends are like, America's too apathetic. No one's going to get on the streets. Yeah. No one's going to give a shit. Yeah. I said, all it takes is a spark, for better and for worse. All it takes is a spark for good things to happen or terrible things to happen. And Floyd was a spark where you had the biggest demonstrations in U.S. history, even bigger than the Me Too demonstrations. So that's where we're at right now, man.
Well, I don't know what you're saying about, I guess you are saying how you thought of that all it takes is a spark, because I was with most of your friends. America's too apathetic. We don't care. We're too comfortable. But I mean, the spark was George Floyd and the pandemic, and everybody just seeing that and being forced to kind of reckon with it. But I am surprised. I honestly am happily surprised by the swing in public opinion. And, it's like, I don't know how much stock or merit you put into this, but I have heard anecdotally, and I should say statistically, the data of people like buying or renting certain films that deal with the civil rights struggle in this country and several anti-racist books from Ibram X. Kendi or Michelle Alexander or what's her name? The white fragility lady, Robin DiAngelo.
Yeah.
And then anecdotally hearing people, a friend of mine yesterday said, my brother has completely changed in the last couple of months and is become like this anti-racist, calling people out. My dad calling all of his racist friends out. Like, I think it's a serious change in opinion for white people who were completely blind and unexposed and uncaring about racial injustice.
Not just white people, immigrants of color. We have to realize that immigrants of color have always chased whiteness in this country, because we realized whiteness is where it's at. Whiteness is the top of the totem pole. Blackness is at the bottom. So you unconsciously realize, run towards whiteness, run as far away from blackness as possible.
Funny that you chose a totem pole.
Yeah, and then you realize
created by people of color.
The totem.
White people's faces, I don't think have ever been on a totem pole. Is what I suggest.
Oh no, they created the totem pole. They'll just
they take credit. We probably stole it and named it a bat.
Not stole it. We discovered it, like Columbus. You discovered something that was already inhabited by others. But even immigrants of color, like my mother-in-law, is doing everything she can to register vote. Like a lot of immigrants just didn't vote. And my aunt She's been in this country for 40 years. I'm like, how come you've never voted? And she goes, I know, I just didn't care.
Wow.
But now, yeah. And
that's
she's
surprising.
like, but I have to vote against this guy. And so that's why, like, when people, we start off this conversation with me being the cynic. That's why I keep saying, I think Trump's going to lose, man. I feel it's too much. The pandemic is too much. I feel the ugliness is too much, the cruelty. I feel the racism. I feel the economic chaos that's going to happen in the next 2 months. It's just too much. It's too much. And the egregious, incompetent, authoritarian plays, right? Like literally openly saying, I'm going to attack the elections. I'm going to defund the USPS. There's something in our like fiber as Americans where I feel like if someone openly admits to like effing with our elections, like we go back to like the American Revolution, like, no, not here. And I think people will come out. I think people will come out because they're so frustrated and pissed off.
I think you're absolutely right. I could not agree more with it. And I think, as I have said over and over, regular listeners have heard me say this, and it's in my comedy act now, swim through a river of COVID to vote on a voting machine made of COVID for anybody not named Trump, including someone named COVID as COVID. I'd vote for him or her because that's how desperate and angry people are. And it doesn't minimize the fact that Trump still has a crazy amount of people who support him. But I don't think it's nearly enough in the states that matter. And I could be wrong. And obviously, there's going to be all kinds of voter suppression. But I honestly, and then you see, going back to athletes, like what LeBron James is doing and what the other advocates are doing to help young people go out. And I said this on MSNBC last week. I said, about college football being canceled. I was like, yeah, all those athletes should now go volunteer as poll workers. And LeBron James must have seen me say it. No, a lot of people were saying that. And now they've created an official organization movement to get young people to be the poll workers. My point being, people are going to go to the polls and stand in line to vote. So this idea of concern about the post office might be a little overblown. I'm glad everybody's paying close attention to it and is very concerned about it for a number of reasons. But people are going to the polls and they're going to vote. And no matter how hard they try to cheat them in the likely Democratic areas, I don't think they're going to get away with it. I don't.
I agree with you. I even said that as well. I said, I have an immunocompromised daughter. I don't care, man. I'm going to stand in that line with my mask and face shield on for 7 hours, 8 hours if I have to. I'll friggin' sleep over, but I will vote this mother effer out. And then you saw a lot of those voters in Georgia, right? You saw that they screwed the Georgian voters for like 12 hours. They didn't care. They stayed. At Wisconsin during a pandemic. The Supreme Court and that
everything they can to handicap those people, and they still voted and they won.
And they voted for a Democrat. They voted for the liberal judge, right? Which was, and so that's where I feel like we're so traumatized as a nation. I understand why a lot of our friends and colleagues are like this, and even a lot of journalists. They're just so traumatized by what happened in 2016 that they're like, it just no, man. I think every day I'm the one trying to make the counter argument in some WhatsApp thread. I always tell people both sided Trump and Clinton. Big sin. Trump was seen as a buffoon and an entertainer. We've talked about this before. We should talk about it again because it happened again yesterday, how Melania Trump was allowed to completely whitewash his sins because she spoke well and looked nice, right? Yeah, apparently.
He dressed like Fidel Castro. I'm a sexist prick.
But that's what they said. But her makeup was nice. I'm like, who cares? Comey, 11 days before the election, Clinton's own mistakes of not going to the Wisconsin. I was there in the Rust Belt before the election, and they were freaked out. The white resentment angle, everyone thinking Clinton was going to win in a landslide. So people are like, I'll stay home. All of that taken together, this mother effer still lost by 3 million votes and only won by 78,000 votes. Which, for if you're at home, 78,000 votes is a whisker. This guy literally won by a whisker.
By the way,
now, and the Republican Party shrunk. Fast forward 4 years, they haven't added anyone.
Exactly.
Who have they added?
Has anybody been like, you know what? I think Trump's doing a great job. I'm really surprised. I didn't vote for him last time, but he's really impressed me with his handling of the pandemic and bringing us together. And I mean, no one. I don't think that person really exists.
And the way he said Yosemite, that's a nice way of saying Yosemite.
It triggers me so hard of all the things. That one really got me. It's the national parks are so important. He's never even heard it. What about when people say, talk about Trump's dishonesty? I was arguing with some asshole on Twitter today because I actually love it. And this guy was saying that, Joe Biden's more dishonest or something. I'm like, all right, listen, I don't know who I'm dealing with.
I got that also.
But what do you think because you just mentioned it, which made me think of it, the most egregious lie that comes to mind, the most blatant, egregious lie that comes to mind. I often think about the whole thing where he said during the campaign that Muslims were cheering at 9/11.
Yeah.
But there was a rumor about that. There was a conspiracy. People made that shit up. There was I could believe that Muslims somewhere in the West Bank or something might have been. I could believe that. It didn't happen. But to me, you just mentioned the most egregious lie. 3 million fraudulent voters voted. He said that over and over and over. To me, that's probably the most blatant lie he told because of the kind of damage that it does and the kind of there's nothing to that. There's no evidence of that. He launched, by the way, an investigation into voter fraud, and they had to be disbanded, of course, because they found nothing. There was never any evidence. He completely made that up.
And you know what's even worse, and the reason why we've been ringing an alarm oftentimes on your show for the past 4 years, is he lied about an election he won.
Yeah.
This is like, people don't realize, like, this is an election that he won. We say that he won. We say it's tainted, but he won it. But he cannot fathom losing the popular vote to Clinton. So he has still persisted in the lie that 3 million undocumented individuals somehow cast a vote for Clinton. And he persists with it, and they just let him off the hook. So I've always said, and the reason why I always predicted that this would happen, and as you know, a lot of our colleagues thought I was crazy, but we're not crazy, unfortunately. I would have loved to have been proven wrong. As I said, if this man is willing to tell that whopper of a lie for an election that he loses, what will he do? Excuse me, for an election that he won, what will he do if he loses?
Yes.
And people forget 2018. This another whopper. We just get so used to it. He openly said the Democrats in Florida are cheating. No evidence. No one brought it up. 2018. And so now that's what's so terrifying is that his base is about what, 25, 30% of America? Well, not his base, but I consider his base all the adherents of the right-wing ecosystem because they get all the same talking points. So we got about 30% of America, Pete, that when Trump loses, they're not going to have any faith in the election. And that's scary. And how does a democracy survive?
Well,
and that's where I become cynical.
Well, that's where you also, though, have actually taken action to do something about. And I'll let you go here on this final note, which is you talking about this new project that you just announced that you've been working on for a while. You're one of my favorite people, period. Just one of my favorite people and have been for a long time for a lot of reasons. But this is one of the types of things that I love you so much for. What is We Will Emerge that you announced today?
Oh, yeah. So We Will Emerge is a collaboration of 111 writers. And basically it came about, it was like 1 a.m. April. I sent an email to my friend Dave Eggers. This is how we start off most of my projects. And I said, I have an idea that maybe we could just get a few of our friends and create a project where we just build off each other and create a narrative and something that could be forward looking. And then he hit back and says, let's make something positive. What about like imagining life after coronavirus? And then I hit back and said, what about like We Will Emerge? And he goes, yeah, that sounds good. And so both of us then created the first template. And the template was this is all that we told writers. Just start with something, say, we will emerge as blank. You fill in the blank and you give us a few lines. That's it. I thought we'd get 10, 15 people. We got 111. And the 111 contributions are really surprising, beautifully written. Some have filled with righteous rage. Some give policy prescriptions. Some are just very humble. Some are funny. But it's so interesting that we gave them a framework and we let them fill it. And all of them kind of coalesced around 5 big topics. So we just organized it. And finally, today, we published it at PEN America. It's called the We Will Emerge Project. And if you just scroll through the names, I sat there and looked at it. I'm like, wow, man, we really assembled an amazing group of people who imagined a blueprint for an America that somehow, hopefully, can survive these multiple crises. And we will emerge as what? And it's an artist's job sometimes to imagine that cultural blueprint for the world and for the rest of us then to fill it in.
Go to, I'll link to it in the show notes, but go to pen.org/we-will-emerge / just go to Just go to Waj's Twitter. He's tweeting about it. I'll share
Pete to do it. You forget. I asked Pete. I don't think you got my email. I'm like, yo, Pete, contribute. And then you like forgot.
I don't know that, but I can't write for shit. You would have been like, you'd have read my submission and felt horrible about you'd been torn up. You'd be like, I don't know. You'd talk to your wife. You'd be like, listen, I love Pete, but this is shit. It's not good.
Like, the horror. It's like the horror.
The guy didn't. I can't believe he even submitted this. The grammar alone is so bad that I got. Yeah, you have to have a separate section. It's called Pete Will Emerge. There's like a kids section.
It's the asterisk. It's the asterisk for Pete.
His pictures, drawings.
The special section of We Will Emerge. Me am emerge good.
Me emerge well. I write like the Hulk.
Me angry now, but emerge good later.
Me emerge with an eye. Oh God! Well,
Patreon me.
Send me money so I can emerge.
I'm like, Pete, this is not. I think you got the wrong idea. He goes, please, $5, $10, anything.
Emerge to a higher tier.
I know.
April, Rain, Jelani, Cobb. You've got Roxanne Gay. Who else? I'm just looking at this. Sophia Bush, who's fantastic. Hassan Minaj, Peter Sagal, who is hilarious and brilliant.
Senator Brown. Val Demings. Yeah.
Wow. Brittany Packnet, Cunningham. This is quite a lineup, buddy. Congratulations. I can't wait to go through it and read these and maybe get some of them on to talk about their submissions.
Yeah, actually, that would be an amazing idea, because if you actually
let's go.
Real quick, if you look at some of the submissions, you know how we like have our assumptions about folks, like, oh, Waj will of course talk about white supremacy or racism or Islamophobia, and then I talk about healthcare. And you look at these folks and what they've written about, and it's really surprising. Like they're a lot of people are one of the best posts is just someone says, well, I hope we emerge huggier. And it's like a playwright. And he told me afterwards, he goes, I never thought that the coronavirus would make me into a mush, but that's where I'm at right now.
Huh. More physically affectionate.
Yeah. Like I miss hugs, he said. And he says, I'm not like a type of a schmaltzy person, but I miss hugs.
You got John Donvan.
Yeah. He did a great piece also.
He's one of my favorite humans as well. That's so great. Julia Yaffe. Wow. So many great people. I can't wait to go through this. Check it out. Go to Waj's Twitter. I'll link to it in the show notes. This is great. What a great project. Congratulations, pal.
Thank you, sir. We started from white supremacy and the potential radicalization of the whites to a hopeful end.
The whites, everybody. By the way, that myth reminds me I have to do my live read for the whites.
The tidy whites?
I can't riff on it. It's too much.
I always say my favorite white is the moderate white.
Moderate white? Why is that?
Well, just, it's the safe white. It's the good white. It's the moderate white. It's the moderate white's my favorite white. I'm for the moderate whites who are listening, come get your people. Dear moderate whites.
Dude, you have to write a play or a pilot or something called The Moderate Whites. That'd good whites.
Hilarious.
Like The Good Wife. But
The Good Whites.
Wajahat Ali, it's always awesome when we talk. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for always having me.
I'll talk to you soon. All right, Wajahat Ali, always an excellent guest. Tim Wise, of course, the same. Always so good. And check the show notes for links to their work and how to find out more about them. Follow them on social media and support them any way you can. Thank you very much for supporting me. If you haven't signed up for a paid subscription, now is the time. Go to the paid subscription link in the show notes or just go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic and you can sign up there. And that would be awesome because I cannot do it without you. We have over 710 subscribers now. Thank you, Brian Hoyt, Tony Williams, and Edgar Borchardt, who all signed up today. It is so inspiring and amazing. Every time I see a new subscription come into my email, I find out as soon as you sign up, and it's a game changer every day because it's not about the money nearly as much as it is about the idea that you believe in this podcast and the show and the work and the access that I have to these people that I'm talking to support it with your hard-earned money. It means so much. So whether you are paying $5, $10, or $100, as several of you actually are, That is amazing. I really appreciate it. And if you want to pay more, you can always edit your subscription up or down. But I hope you don't, because I really need your support and your work to be able to do this. And the goal, of course, 3,000 subscribers is what I'm saying. And then hopefully I can hire one or more people, part or full-time, to help me work on the podcast. And on Friday, I get my new computer. I'm going to be like a little kid and all of its ability. I got a big boy machine for a big boy production. So I'm very excited about that and looking forward to it. Thank you for listening. You're not alone. It was a hard day yesterday. It's a hard week. Everything seems to be difficult, but we've got each other, and we're going to get through this one way or another with each other. You're not alone. I love you, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Maybe tonight.